Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to this very special occasion of the Days of Exile, die Tage des Exils. My name is Muschda Sherzada. I'm from NDR Kultur, the media partner of this event, and I look pretty much forward to guiding you through this special evening hosted by the Körber-Stiftung. My first name, Muschda, is Persian and means something like joyful message or good news. And this is going to be my mission for tonight, because I believe that, especially in dark times, we have to create spaces for hope, for exchange, for meaningful encounters, and for new perspectives. And that's precisely the goal of the Days of Exile, which will continue until March 7th here in Hamburg, presenting compelling exile stories from both the past and the present. It is therefore a great privilege to introduce this year's patron of the Days of Exile. Welcome to Hamburg, Julija Nawalnaja. Seems like you are as well as excited as I am. That's nice to hear. As a Russian human rights activist and wife of the late opposition leader Alexei Navalny, she herself has been forced to live in exile, where she continues her husband's work with remarkable resilience, fighting for a free and democratic Russia. I am very excited that we all have the opportunity to listen to her thoughts and her experiences tonight. This evening is also very special because 2025 marks the 10th anniversary of the speech on exile. Another joyful message I am happy to share with you, because it's so important to give these voices a platform. And there's even, yeah, we have an applause. But wait, there's even more. We are looking forward to a musical performance by the world-famous violinist Gidon Kremer, together with the chamber orchestra Kremerata Lettonica, and including, and this is very special, a world premiere dedicated to the memory of Alexei Navalny. So let me promise you, yeah, that's also very special. So let me promise you one thing: this will definitely be an evening to remember. And now, please welcome the chairman of the executive board of the Körber-Stiftung, Thomas Paulsen, and afterwards, the president of the Hamburg Parliament, Carola Veit.
Dear President of the Hamburg Parliament, Carola Veit, dear Consul General Valery Lübken, dear Julija Nawalnaja, ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, it's my great pleasure to welcome you on behalf of Körber-Stiftung to our today's speech on exile. In 1939, the German author Stefan Zweig, who fled from the Nazis via several stations to Brazil, wrote in his autobiography, and I quote, "Thus I no longer belong anywhere, a stranger everywhere, and at best a guest." With these words, he described the feeling of being driven into exile. He was one of the many hundreds of thousands of Germans who were able to save themselves from the direct clutches of the Nazis, but who in exile were left with feelings of homelessness. Many of them faced a future with existential uncertainty and despair. Although Stefan Zweig wrote these words more than 80 years ago, they are still relevant today. Millions of people are currently fleeing from war, violence, persecution, and human rights violations. And these global refugee flows go hand in hand with an increasing number of countries in which autocrats, dictators override democratic freedoms, violate human rights, and harass people in the most severe ways. This is not only happening far away on other continents, but it is happening in our immediate neighborhood. Millions of people have fled from Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, which was foreshadowed by the illegal annexation of Crimea in 2014. And let me say this tonight, our solidarity is with the people of Ukraine. Within Russia, President Putin has critics of the regime brutally persecuted and silenced. In Belarus, which is also at the doorstep of the European Union, voices of opposition are stifled and critics of the country's ruler, Alexander Lukashenko, are imprisoned. In Belarus and Russia, dissidents, opposition members, journalists, and artists are forced to flee into exile. Germany has become an important host country for people in exile, and we at Körber-Stiftung have made it our mission to help them be seen and be heard. As part, thank you. We want to offer a platform to those who have fled from war and political persecution and are working in exile for democracy and human rights in their home countries. For several years, we have been inviting people to the Exile Media Forum, which is the largest conference in Germany for journalists in exile. Just a few days ago, we presented the Exile Visual Arts Award for the artistic approaches to the topic of exile, and I'm happy that the winner of the award 2023, Fakhunde Shahrudi, is also with us here tonight. Just recently, we opened the Days of Exile here in Hamburg at the Körber Forum, which is a program of events taking place throughout the city that focuses on the experiences of people in exile. And until March 7, there are 50 events which will address the topics of flight, persecution, and exile in the present and in the past. The annual highlight of our activities is the speech on exile. Prominent personalities in exile give their own personal perspective on the effects of exile and persecution. They demonstrate how important it is to give people in exile a voice and to sensitize our societies to the issues of exile. Previous speakers include the Turkish journalist Can Dündar. I'm very happy that he can be with us tonight. The Afghan entrepreneur Zore Esmaili, the Iranian artist Parastu Fouar, the Mexican journalist Anabel Hernandez, the South African-born writer Christopher Hope, and also Herta Müller, our Nobel Prize winner in literature, the Belarusian civil rights activist Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, the Bulgarian-born writer Ilya Troyanov, and the Chinese musician and author Liao Yiwu. This year marks, we've heard about this, the 10th anniversary of the speech of exile. In the light of this anniversary, we are particularly honored to have Russian human rights activist Julija Nawalnaja at this year's speakers and patron of the Days of Exile in Hamburg. After the death of her husband, Alexei Navalny, one of the most important Russian opposition politicians in a Russian prison camp, she has continued his work for democracy and the rule of law in Russia from exile. In her home country, an arrest warrant has been issued for Julija on charges of belonging to an extremist organization. The magazine Der Spiegel quoted her as saying, "Of course, I could just keep quiet, but that's not me. I would never give up on Russia." Dear Julija, with words like these, you are encouraging many of your compatriots not to lose hope, even in exile, and to fight for political change. Welcome to Hamburg. We've just heard that's your first time in Hamburg. Welcome to Körber-Stiftung. It's wonderful to have you here. This evening's musical program will be performed by Gidon Kremer, one of the most important violinists of our time, together with the chamber orchestra Kremerata Lettonica. Gidon Kremer has received numerous outstanding musical awards for his work. He repeatedly calls for humanity and understanding and advocates for victims of war and persecution. He was awarded the Grand Cross of Merit of the Federal Republic of Germany and received the Beethoven Prize for Human Rights, Peace, Freedom, and the fight against poverty. Dear Mr. Kremer, dear musicians of the Kremerata Lettonica, also a warm welcome to you. And with this, ladies and gentlemen, it's wonderful that so many of you have joined us for tonight on our speech on exile. I wish us all an inspiring evening. Thank you very much.
Danke. Dr. Paulsen, ladies and gentlemen, and above all, dear Mrs. Nawalnaja, you have said, everyone living in exile has their own story, but something links them all, the shared pain, the longing for home, and the hope of return. You're describing the fate of an incredible number of people. Far more than 100 million people worldwide are displaced. They had to leave their homes because they were threatened by war, terror, or violence, or of the results of the worldwide destruction of our environment. Or they have experienced at firsthand how political persecution, suppression, and violence destroy a society. And they had to leave their friends and family behind. Many of them feel inner conflict, just like you, Ms. Nawalnaja. You cannot return to Moscow, your home. You would be arrested immediately. You couldn't go to your husband's funeral, and you haven't even been able to visit his grave. On behalf of the city of Hamburg, let me express our deep sympathy and our great respect. Ladies and gentlemen, Julija Nawalnaja is fleeing the autocratic system in her home country and continuing the work that her husband, Alexei Navalny, paid for with his life 1 year and 5 days ago. In his autobiography, her husband wrote this about Julija, among other things. He wrote, "In fact, of the two of us, she holds the more radical views. She has always been involved in politics. She despises the people in power in our country, perhaps even more than I do. And that turns motivation to what I do." That's what he wrote about you. So this year, you're the patron of our Hamburg Exile Days, in German Tage des Exils. Thank you very much for being here. Flight and exile are fundamental parts of our recent German history. During the Second World War, at least 360,000 exiles left Germany trying to escape fascism, and many Jewish people couldn't find refuge. I'm also speaking to you today on behalf of the Elsbeth and Herbert Weichmann Foundation, a partner of the Days of Exile. The Weichmanns were more fortunate than other exiles and succeeded in fleeing via France to the USA. There, like many other politically persecuted people, they campaigned for peace, human rights, and democracy in their country of origin. They returned here after the war and worked hard to rebuild our democracy. Both became members of Hamburg Parliament, and later Herbert Weichmann became mayor of our town. He succeeded our former mayor, Max Brauer, who also returned from exile. Herbert and Elsbeth Weichmann did a great service to our town, and maybe they were even better at their job because they had lived in exile before. I believe that many people who flee violence in their home countries feel the same way. They develop a strong will, view flight and exile just staging posts before devoting themselves all the more to the reconstruction of their countries of origin that have been autocratically governed. Our guest today is a woman who is on just such a journey. But she also has to face voices who claim that
good Russians who fight for democratic values do not exist. In their point of view, Russia would have to lose the war against Ukraine first and then be decolonized before democracy could become a serious matter. I'm convinced things aren't quite that simple. Yes, most of the links to Russia have been cut, and that's absolutely right. Our support goes out to Ukraine, which is now entering its 4th year of war. But as a society, we are poorer without these links, without the exchanges, without what we learn about culture, without the trade. Hamburg's oldest town twinning is with St. Petersburg, as many of you know. Of course, this is on ice. But we should always look forward to the day when the bloodshed is over. Then we must be ready to extend the hand of friendship again. During my visits to St. Petersburg, I met people who wanted a more free and democratic Russia. I'm well aware that their values, goals, and interests only in part agree with my own or ours. But they were searching for a different path, and this discussion must be resumed after the war, of course, with justified reservations and critical eyes. And I hope that you, Ms. Nawalnaja, are prepared to be a part of it as someone who knows both sides so well. Fortunately, you're not alone in this. Today, a very warm welcome also goes out to your companions, Kira Jarmusch and Leonid Volkov, who are here with you. Mrs. Nawalnaja, you will be speaking to us yourself in a moment. And in the meantime, we can remind ourselves of what you show us. You're an example of how exile is more than just a place of refuge. Political exile is a place of hope and new beginnings. You speak on behalf of the oppressed, and you show us that our society is shaped by the people who get actively involved. Ladies and gentlemen, we all have the great fortune to live in a safe and democratic country. We are doing better than ever before in Germany, and we should do everything to keep it that way. Of course, this is not always easy, but our constitution, the Grundgesetz, is not a fair weather law. It also applies if things get more difficult. For example, people who question the taking in of exiles and the right of asylum undermine the fundamental democratic consensus of our society. Democracy also means taking over responsibility for one another. We have the opportunity that Julija Nawalnaja and many other people in the world can only dream of, namely to strengthen our democracy again and again through free and fair elections. Our democracy needs our voices. So, my last words, please use your right to vote on the next 2 Sundays. Thank you.
Today we have the privilege of welcoming a woman who's known not only for her personal courage and determination, but also for her commitment to values that know no borders: truth, humanity, and democracy. You once said, "I was Alexei Navalny's wife, now I'm Julija Nawalnaja," and you have become more than that. You have become a role model and inspiration for millions of people worldwide who cannot return to their homeland anymore. And it's a great honor to welcome you here today. We cannot wait to listen to you now. A warm welcome, please, for Julija Nawalnaja.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, Thank you for gathering here today in this hall of El Philharmonie. And thank you for focusing your attention on the subject of exile. It's very important for millions of people around the world, including here in Europe, for my country, Russia, and of course, for me personally. 3 years ago, Vladimir Putin launched bloody war against Ukraine, a war that has brought immense suffering to its citizens, forcing millions of Ukrainians to flee their homes and become refugees. Because of Putin, these people were torn away from their homeland and their loved one. A year before that, another dictator, Alexander Lukashenko, violently crushed protests against the elections he had stolen in Belarus. Thousands were thrown into prison. More than 500,000 people were forced into exile, adding to the grim statistics. The same fate ultimately befell Russians who refused to be part of Putin's criminal regime. Those who stood against the war in Ukraine, who refused to serve a dictator, who would not take up arms. In just 3 years, around 1.5 million have left Russia to escape war, repression, and forced military drive. Mostly young, bright, and talented individuals, who were the first to pack their bags and leave. Political activists facing persecution for their anti-war stance. People with a strong sense of justice who refuse to stand silent. Young professionals confident in their ability to build a new life elsewhere. Entrepreneurs whose businesses were seized by corrupt security forces and turned up charges. 1.5 million people may seem like a small number in a country as big as Russia, just 1% of population. But when that 1% represents some of the country's best minds, it is a devastating blow to its future. It is obvious, when people flee their country, it's a bad sign. Common sense would suggest that everyone should want to see less refugees in the world. But sadly, the reality is grim. According to the UN High Commissioner of Refugees, a decade ago, there were 14 million people worldwide who had been forced to flee their countries due to persecution. By 2024, this number had nearly tripled to 38 million. That is the population of Poland, a major European country. Behind these numbers are real lives. 38 million people who were shattered with faced such grave danger that they had no choice but to leave everything behind and step into the unknown. Almost 1 in 10, 3.5 million, have found temporary refuge in Germany. That is the population of Berlin. I am grateful to Germany and many other Western countries for the fact that so many of their citizens and political leaders understand and welcome exiles. They provide them with protection, shelter, and financial support. They uphold them humanitarian commitments. But can this continue indefinitely? And should it? What happens if over the next 10 years the number of refugees in the world triples once again? What kind of world we will be living in then? We need to be realistic and acknowledge the truth. The capacity to take in exiles is not unlimited. This simply cannot go on forever. And most importantly, what happens next? Every time you read the news, it seems like yet another conflict erupts somewhere in the world. People are forced to pack up whatever little they have and flee, trying to save the only thing left to them, their lives and their freedom. Their lives and freedom of their children. They go in search of a place where they will be welcomed, turning to democratic nations that remain committed to international humanitarian law. But let's be honest, Democracies are not doing too well right now. According to the Economist Democracy Index, only 8% of the world population live in full democracies. The rest are far less fortunate. 55% live under authoritarian dictators or hybrid regimes. That's 7 times more than those in democracies. You don't need to be a mathematician to see that there is simply not enough space in democratic countries for every exile fleeing a dictatorship. You don't need to be a mathematician to understand that we must address the root cause, not just the symptoms. The real issue is that far too many regimes around the world oppress their citizens and create refugees in the first place. As long as we treat only the symptoms while ignoring the disease, we won't solve the problem. In fact, we will only make it worse. That is exactly what we are witnessing in many European countries. We see the rise of politicians offering simple solutions to complex global problems. Solutions that are as easy as they are wrong. The idea that you can just build a high enough wall to keep problems out and they will simply disappear. Of course, that's not how it works. When parents are trying to save their children from hunger, violence, and death, no fence will stop them. The only real way to reduce the number of exiles is to reduce the number of dictators in dictatorship. People flee because of dictators, because of what they do to their own countries and their neighbors. No one goes to an exile from a democracy. Of course, fighting dictators is incredibly difficult. It even can get you killed. Dictators in the 21st century are more cunning and more dangerous. They learn from each other and learn from the past. They have mastered modern technology. They control the most powerful propaganda tools. They are wealthy and they are ruthless. Standing up to them is risky, but there is only one way to stand against them. If the world had more politically stable governments rooted in democracy and the rule of law, there would be no need for high walls. If dictatorship continues to spread, the number of exiles will only keep growing, and no wall will be high enough to stop it. That is why, while I'm deeply grateful to every country that has taken in exiles from my homeland and beyond, I will not to stop fighting Vladimir Putin's regime. I know that many of you stand with me and my colleagues in this struggle, and I am grateful for your support. On February 16, 2024, my husband, Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny, was murdered in prison at the behest of Vladimir Putin. Exactly 1 year ago, on this day, on February 19, just 3 days after Alexei was killed, I released a video claiming to continue his fight, to carry on his work. I was devastated. I was afraid. But could I let Putin win? Could I allow my husband's sacrifice to be in vain? The only way to honor his sacrifice is to build the beautiful Russia of the future, the Russia he dreamed of, spoke about, and believed in. The Russia he gave his life for. A country that will make those forced into exile want to return back home. I don't live in my homeland either. For me, home is Russia. And I never stay anywhere else for long. Most of my time I spend traveling on the planes, in the hotels. I wasn't for my husband's funeral. I can't visit his grave. If I set foot in Russia, I will be arrested immediately. Every single day, more than anything, I dream of going home. I know most of those in exile share the same dream. Loving your country doesn't mean you cannot also find your place, however temporary, in another. There is no contradiction between loving your own country and gratitude towards the country that has taken you in. Between building a life in exile with all its small joys and struggles and preserving your culture. Between learning a new language and working every day to change things back home so we can return. All of it matters. Every exiled person has their own path, their own struggle, their own pain, their own story. But we are united by something greater. Our shared grief, our longing for home, and our hope of returning. We must remember that and stand by one another. We will surely come back home one day. And we will do everything in our power to make that day come as soon as possible. So let me put it in this way. I will do everything I can to ensure such events like the Körber Foundation's Days of Exile are no longer needed. The one day they simply won't need to exist. And we will be able to live in our home countries and our own homes. Thank you for everything you do and not for refusing to give up. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on exile with us. May I ask you first, with everything happening around you at the moment, how are you feeling?
Wow, it's a very easy and very difficult question all the time. First of all, hello to everyone once again, and thank you for such a long applause. It means a lot. I feel very different, and I never know how to answer this question. Because from one side, the awful tragedy happened 1 year ago, and this tragedy will all the time will be with me. But from the other side, there is absolutely different life. I see people, I see their support, and I'm very grateful for this, and of course it gives me strength.
Let us talk about exile, because it is well known that starting a new life in exile comes with immense challenges. Which personal difficulties have you experienced on this journey so far?
That's true. To say the truth, I never even thought that it could happen with me, because I was born in Moscow. I spent all my life in Moscow, and never expected to happen to be in exile. That's why I know how it works. Just one day, you start to live in another country, and everything is new. It's absolutely new life. You need to build new home. You need to think about your children. And I'm sharing, of course, all these difficulties and all the thoughts with all the people in exile. And as you heard from my speech, there are so many millions of these people who are not able to live because of different reasons, but especially because of political reasons, to live in their own countries. It's very difficult, and now I know on my own example how it works.
Unfortunately. You are known for your incredible courage and resilience, and you are also a very busy woman, traveling a lot, working a lot, always keeping up the fight. How and when do you find the time to process your thoughts and also your pain, and how do you find the strength to keep up this fight against Putin?
I don't. I don't have time for a lot of thoughts, I think. And probably, speaking about pain, I think it helped me a lot to fight with the pain since 16th of February, because I started this journey not even the next day, but it happened, my first speech was in several hours after Alexei was, after the news that Alexei is dead. That's why, and I became so busy, and a lot of it, I even didn't have enough time to think about this pain, but I think it helped me a lot to struggle, because every day I meet so many great people, and a lot of them are sharing my life, or a lot of them give me a lot of support. It's very important, and I'm very grateful for that.
And how do you cope with the reality of living in exile and still having to face threats to your personal safety? Because even living in exile, there's an arrest warrant issued against you.
Well, I think that the best way not to be afraid, just not to think about it a lot. It's not about that I'm crazy and I don't think that it could be a danger for me. It's just about to do the right things. It's just about to have your own beliefs. It's just about that every day to do something right and to understand at the end of the day that you did something, probably a very small thing, sometimes smaller, sometimes bigger, but something what brings you to the back to home, to the changes, to the democratic changes. It's very difficult, of course, but still it's very important.
Yes, and speaking of democratic changes, your husband was convinced that he can only change something when he's present in Russia. And you are a politician working from exile now. How can you influence the situation from abroad? And what are the biggest challenges?
I absolutely agree. It's very difficult. Almost all Russian opposition is now in exile. And I think that my husband was right, and he had enough courage and bravery, but time is changing, situation is changing, and now everybody for their opposition views in Russia will be in prison the same day. And I think that now we are in this situation that we have to work in exile. It's very difficult, but still we are trying to have connection with people inside Russia in different ways.
Yes, and speaking of staying connected, maybe before we come to an end, we can talk about the solidarity among exiles. A large part of the Russian opposition lives in different European cities like Berlin or London. How do you experience the solidarity among them, and which kind of support are you receiving?
I'm here. Just one man came to the stage and said that he greets me from Barnaul. And it's about solidarity when you come to Hamburg the first time and people on the streets, somewhere at the airports, coming to you, saying good words. It's about, of course, solidarity. And I think about, if we are speaking about political activists and solidarity, it's about that I hope that we are sharing all the one main goal, that we are fighting against Vladimir Putin criminal regime. And this is solidarity. We have one aim, we have one goal, and we just need to do probably different things, but to make this moment happen as soon as possible.
And I would like to end our conversation on a positive note. You said Russia, of course, is your home. Moscow is where your heart belongs to. And I grew up in an Afghan household. I was born here in Germany. And when you ask me what I think of first when thinking of home, it's the smell of karboli, which is the traditional Afghan rice dish. I love it. What is you have to try it if you didn't have. There are excellent restaurants in Hamburg, by the way.
Okay.
What is the first cherished memory that comes to your mind when you think of home?
Well, it's in general the feeling that you are at home. I remember this feeling when, for example, Alexei has already been imprisoned, but Zahar, who is here as well, our son, he studied in Germany. And I visited him for holidays. And every time when I went back, I was so happy when I found myself in Moscow. I just stepped down at the airport, and I just realized once, several years ago, that I have this feeling like people describe it. I'm at home. Mm-hmm. And this feeling, of course, I'm missing. Because as I told you, I have a lot of support. People are very kind to me. But still, of course, it's not like at home. You're just coming back, I don't know, you smell this air, and you understand that you are at home town, despite Alexei was in prison. Mm-hmm. So the situation was very difficult at that time. But this feeling that you are at home, it's something incredible.
Something very special. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for being the patron of the Days of Exile, and we sincerely wish you and your family all the best.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me. It's a great honor.
Thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor to welcome one of the most outstanding violinists of our time today, Gidon Kremer. With his unique artistic vision, he is internationally celebrated as one of the most original and compelling artists of his generation. His repertoire seamlessly bridges past and present, ranging from beloved classical masterpieces to contemporary works, with a deep commitment to music from Russian and Eastern European composers. Kremer's interpretations honor tradition while remaining fresh, vibrant, and original. But he's not only a virtuoso musician, he's also an advocate for human rights. His artistic work is always linked to his social commitment, a stance that has been awarded with numerous awards, like we have heard with the speech of Thomas Pausen before. And despite the horrors happening in the world, which sometimes leave him with a sense of helplessness, like he said, he remains steadfast in his belief. He says that music possesses a power that transcends authority, a power that puts dignity and beauty at the center. So tonight we are not only experiencing exceptional music, but also a living legacy uniting art and humanity. Another topic which is very close to Mr. Kremer's heart is the promotion of young musicians, which is why he founded the orchestra Kremerata Baltica 28 years ago, which later gave rise to the Kremerata Lettonica, which we will see today. Playing side by side with a musician like Gidon Kremer for many years now, the musicians of Kremerata Lettonica are constantly enriched with knowledge and inspiration, which they are very eager to show you now. You will hear 6 extraordinary pieces tonight, starting with Valentin Silvestrov's Serenata, a composer from Ukraine, followed by De Profundis, which is a world premiere dedicated to the memory of Alexei Navalny and was composed by Krista Petersen, who is a musician himself from the orchestra. After Felix Mendelssohn's Andante, we will hear Astor Piazzolla's 4/4 Tango. This piece will be performed today in a larger ensemble than usual. And afterwards, there will be Echo to Alfred Schnittke by Viktor Kissin, Alfred Schnittke, who lived in Hamburg for many years. And then there will be another surprise, which I will not tell you now. So please welcome with me Gidon Kremer, Linda Leine at the piano, and the orchestra Kremerata Lettonica.
speak. They speak music. But tonight I want to mention a couple of words. It will not be a speech. I want to thank the Körber Foundation for organizing this event. I want to greet the wonderful Julija Nawalny. And I'm thinking about myself and my fate. Actually, it's also related, connected to exile, because my grandfather was a concertmaster here in Hamburg before the war and had to go in exile. And I do understand music can't solve the world, can't save the world. But music can at least reassure us and support us. After this long program and long speeches, I want still, with my colleagues from Kremerata Lettonica, present you an encore, even two of them, but they will be short. The first one is a theme of a cartoon, music of which belongs to a wonderful composer Mieczysław Weinberg, who also was in exile. And the cartoon is called, you can see it in YouTube, the cartoon is wonderful and has a wonderful title too, Bonifatius Holidays. And here I'm coming to a point. I would to recommend some holidays to the insane politicians that these days are trying to rule the world. I really think they deserve or need a holiday.
Thank you. Thank you, Gidon Kremer. Thank you so much, Kremerata Lettonica. Thank you, Linda Leine. It was a real pleasure listening to you. Thank you. I would like, yeah. This is for you. I would like to thank the Körber-Stiftung and everyone involved in organizing this special evening, and many thanks to you for being here tonight and creating this special atmosphere. And most importantly, thank you for joining us tonight, Julija Nawalnaja. Let me just say two little things and then you can leave. Two important things. I would also like to invite all of you once again to explore the program of the Days of Exile, die Tage des Exils. It's a really special and interesting program. I'm going to join many events as well, not professionally, but privately. And second, please go vote. I wish you a wonderful evening. Thank you for having me and good night. Bye.